Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm meadsy69. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we've already had a look at the top 5 tanks for noobs or newbies or new players. In today's video, we're going to look at the top 5 tanks that are not for new players. Basically, 5 tanks new players should just stay away from, because they are just going to get absolutely wrecked if they don't know how to play these tanks. It doesn't mean that these tanks are bad. These tanks, most of these tanks are actually pretty good. But for newer players, they're probably not going to be so good, because some of them might actually take a bit of skill to play. If you play it wrong, if you get caught out, you're going to get absolutely ripped apart. So the first tank, of course, has to be the Grill. Now, the Grill is a fantastic tank. The Waffle is, again, a fantastic tank, but put this tank in the wrong hands, then you're just going to get obliterated, literally obliterated. Everyone is going to just destroy you. So the Grill, as good as it is, it definitely isn't a tank for newer players. But once you get to learn the game, you actually learn over time how to play the Grill, what you need to do to get out of bad situations, and then you'll probably start to do well in the Grill. But yeah, the Grill definitely is not a tank for new players. Next up, we have my favorite tank in the game. Of course, it is the Leopard 1. Absolutely fantastic. But again, if you play this tank wrong, it's not a great tank, because it's got no armor whatsoever. Anyone can pretty much HE you from anywhere. But again, once you learn how to play this tank, it does become a lot better and just absolutely amazing. It's one of those tanks you've got to be patient with. You have to be patient with it, because if you're not, then people are going to aim at you. They're not going to bounce. I mean, we did bounce the first shot in there against this T92E1, but if you over angle, if you over poke, you're just going to get destroyed. And if you come out sideways against some big tanks, which we're just about to do here, you're going to get, you're just going to get beaten. But all the things good about this tank, I mean, it's almost everything is good about this tank. The accuracy, the alpha, the DPM, the speed, absolutely beautiful. The aim time, everything is really, really nice about this tank, and this is why I love it. And the thing with what I find best about this tank is you can't just roll up. You know, there's a couple of mediums where you're able to bounce some shots, you're able to get up close. This isn't really one of them. You really have to think about what you're going to do. You really have to think about your next move when you're driving the Leopard, and that is what you need to constantly do. You've constantly got to think about your next move, and this is why I love it so much. It does actually make you a better player, but to play this tank, you really need to learn the game first. Learn the mediums, how to rush, how to get away, how to run away, and then you will start to do better. But for new players, definitely the Leopard is not for you. Next up is what I call the noob man's tank, because yeah, a lot of noobs play this tank and they don't know how to play the tank. And I get why they're playing the tank, because of course it is the Tiger line, and a lot of people always grind the Tiger line first because it's a unique tank. Everyone knows the Tiger, and when they join a game like this, if they know their tanks, they're most likely going to know the Tiger. So they go up the Tiger line, and then they reach the E100 at the end. But yeah, this definitely, as much armor as it's got, this definitely is not a tank for newer players. Now, I'm actually going to be a bit of a noob here. I'm not angling correctly, and this is the thing. This is why this tank is not for the newer players, because they just won't know how to angle this tank. It's a brilliant tank. It really is a fantastic tank if you angle correctly. If you don't angle correctly, you're just going to get ripped apart. You're not going to be able to use that big massive gun of yours, and you're not going to bounce any shots. You have to angle, and the reason I'm putting it in there for not newer players is because not only I get newer players might learn, they might sort of learn how to angle, but with a tank like this, not only do you have to angle your hull, you also have to angle your turret as well. There's a couple of heavies, you know, the IS-4, you only really have to angle your hull, but the E100, you have to angle everything, and if you don't, just like we're doing here, we're getting ripped apart from this this M5 Yo. He's literally just torn us apart. We still managed to bounce 930 damage, however, so we've still done something. But once you learn how to play the tank, honestly, if you are newer to the game, by all means, grind the line. Maybe stop once you get to the E100, because the E75 is completely different to the E100. So if you've not really learned how to angle properly, then stop at the E75, play the E75, maybe even get the E100, but just don't play it until you feel that you're ready, because the E100 is a massive step from the E75. But once you get to know the tank, it is a fantastic tank. I love it, and it's a tank that I've always loved, but it definitely is a noob man's tank. And once you start learning to angle just like we're doing here, then that is when you will start to get the bounces. But definitely had to add this tank in this list, because as you can see, if you play it wrong, I've played most of this game wrong, and I've paid the price. You know, I've still bounced 1300 damage, but I've only got 300 hit points left, so I haven't done it properly. And if I'm experienced, so if a newer player is playing this tank, they probably wouldn't have bounced that 1300 damage. So the E100 is definitely a tank not for new players. And the next tank is the FV4005, and to be honest, very similar to the Grill. Obviously it doesn't have any armor, and it's got the auto loader, but again, if you are not effective with this gun and with this tank, you're going to get torn apart. You've got 4 shells. It used to have 3, it's now got 4. If you go into the wrong kind of position, again, you're going to get ripped apart, because once you've used them 4 shells, yes, you're going to do a little bit of damage if you manage to get all 4 shots out from these 4 shells, but if you're in the wrong position whilst you're on a reload, you're just going to get torn apart. But again, just like the other tanks on this list, once you learn the tank, then it does become a very, very good tank. Now, for me, it is very nice with the 4 shells. You can be a lot more effective. You can clear up tanks a lot quicker than when you have the 3 shells. But yeah, you do have that long reload, and the reload is absolutely massive. And considering it's got no armor, the speed is okay. Of course, it does have that speed boost that you can use, but again, you've got to be effective with that. You've got to use it at the right time. The reload button there, the intricate reload, again, you've got to use that at the right time. So there's a lot to think about when you are playing the FV4005. So again, definitely not one of those tanks. There are tanks out there. There are tank destroyers for newer players. You know, you've got the Hori, maybe. It's got good armor. It's got a good gun. The E3, as I've said, and maybe even the E4. Like, these tanks have armor. So I'll definitely think about playing them before you even touch tanks or even lines like the FV4005. And just like here, like, I've got 1 shell left, I've got to make it effective, and I've got to use that. Now, if this guy pushes me, he doesn't know I'm on a reload, but sometimes you've got to trick these guys. You know, if I'm backing up, this guy is going to know that I'm on a reload. So sometimes you've got to trick them. Sometimes you've got to start even maybe pushing them a little bit, try and trick them. I did get away with it this time, but not always you are going to get away with it. But definitely not a tank for the newer players. This now leads me on to the final tank. I had to go for a light tank. I couldn't just go for tank destroyers, and I couldn't just go for heavy tanks. I thought, you know what, I've got to add a light tank, because most light tanks are not good for newer players. If you're a newer player into the game, I definitely wouldn't grind a light tank first. I would be grinding a heavy tank first, you know, an IS-4, IS-7, Kranwagen, something like that. The Sheridan is not one of them tanks that I would play first as a newer newer player. Now, again, it is a fantastic tank. Very, very good tank. But again, if you're a newer player, you're not going to know how to use this tank effectively. It's got speed, it's got a nice gun, it's got the alpha, but if you get caught out, and you've got to remember, you don't have the DPM other light tanks or other medium tanks has got, so you can't just rush in and bully the team. Now, again, this game, if this was a 40% player, I'm not just bullying the 40% players, but if this was a 40% player, they would not have been able to do what we're about to do. Now, you've got to use your brain a little bit. Now, I know that this T22 is pushing, so I'm just going to go away a little bit. I'm going to go away, and I'm looking at his hit points, and I'm thinking, right, okay, he's away from that player up there. If I manage to get one more shot off, I will be able to take this guy out. So he's not focusing me. I do get that shot off. I'm still full hit points at the moment, but I do know that there are 2 tank destroyers around this side of the map, but I want to keep him separated from them tank destroyers. He should actually be with them tank destroyers right now, but because he's decided to push forward, he's isolated, and I'm just biding my time. I'm waiting for my time to push, and this is the time I'm just going to push. Yes, I'm going to take a shot, but taking a 300 alpha shot to take out a T22 for me at this point in the game was definitely worth it. So it is a nice tank. Of course, when it had the missiles, it would have probably been even worse for newer players. Definitely wouldn't recommend it to newer players with the missiles, but once you get to know this tank, how to use it as a proper light tank, how to bully the team, you know, spot them, take your shot, do 500 damage, then get the hell out of there, then you will start to perform much better in this tank and realize just how good this tank is. So let me know your thoughts on this top 5 video, not for noobs. Top 5 tanks, not for the newer players. Let me know your thoughts. Is there any tanks that you would add in this list? But for now, hope you enjoyed the video, guys. I'm meadsy69, and I will catch you all soon. Bye-bye. With